Welcome, everybody, to the Goats and Unicorns podcast. I am your host, Zach Betzel, here with my co-host, Landon Willard. Today, we've got an episode about overcoming adversity and being in the trenches in business and life knocking you down, and how even when that happens, that it is okay. Everything's going to be all right. And it is much more about how you react to situations in your life than what actually happens to you. And so we're going to share some of our personal stories, talk about other people that we know, things that they've gone through, and some different tips that we have on that front.
Everybody loves a good
classic topic.
Yeah, classic topic. Everybody loves a good feel-good story and you know, rags to riches stories, and not even just that, but just, I mean, even you don't have to
underdog stories.
Yeah,
Dude,
underdog stories.
I was telling you the other day,
which
man.
I think everybody, you know, in life and business, I think it's healthy to have an underdog mentality.
Oh, for
which
sure.
Is you know, fine line between having a victim mentality and an underdog mentality. We can kind of talk about the differences. That might be interesting.
Yeah.
But just, you know, moving forward with aggression and passion and accomplishing your goals.
Yeah. And I think it really comes down to, like, once you say probably just like, the mindset, like of right. The outlook and perspective, right? Like,
right.
I've had a couple conversations recently that are interesting because it's funny because, like, if you actually look at like what truth is, or like what everybody believes truth to be different things based off of their own perspective of reality. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
How like you and I could both witness the exact same thing happening, or the exact same thing happens to us. You see it one way, I see it completely different. And therefore our definitions of what truth or what really happened are completely different. Isn't that bizarre?
Right.
Super crazy. And I think that's one thing that flows a lot into this. And kind of just quickly off the bat, we'll talk about this a bit, but quite a bit, but the solution to making sure that you have that underdog mentality when you're trying to overcome trials and obstacles that come your way, as opposed to, I'm just going to give up. Like, dang it, this happened to me. I'm done. I'm toast. Like, I guess I'm not destined for greatness or whatever, you know,
right.
Whatever the actual thoughts that go through your head are. It's that having that perspective and being able to realize the way that you're looking at a situation first, and then being able to be like, okay, I need to change my attitude a little bit, and then chart forward. So yeah, pretty crazy, man. All sorts of things come to mind. I mean, one of the things that I've been pondering on lately, and obviously like we've started this podcast, right? We're coming out with episodes every week. And, you know, I think sometimes people who might listen to this, whether it's now or they're, you know, this could be years in the future that you're looking at this episode or seeing a clip from this episode, right? And people start to think that, oh, you know, Zach's finally made it and that's why he started his podcast, or, you know, Landon's finally made it and that's why they're doing this thing now and they're doing the Goats and Unicorns thing and helping other people. But dude, at the end of the day, like, we've spent years of our lives going through very hard times, and clue everyone in on a little secret, you still go through hard times, even when you start to accumulate a little bit of success. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's one thing that I try to tell a lot of students in our consulting programs and stuff all the time is like, you guys are going to get your teeth kicked in, right? I try not to sugarcoat things, and I try to prepare them for those obstacles as best I can, because that's ultimately what's going to happen. More obstacles are going to come up. It doesn't get easier. You just get better at overcoming it, you know? Mm-hmm. So I'm curious to hear some of your thoughts on some of the hard times that you've gone through as you've grown your businesses. And you don't have to necessarily get into super nitty gritty details, but I'm just curious what your thoughts are on, you know, in the early days, right? So put yourself back in the early days. You haven't really built a business yet, and you're just getting your teeth kicked in over and over again. I mean, what's going through your head at that point? And like, what did go through your head in those early days? Because I'm sure it wasn't a smooth ride to the top. I know it wasn't. No. But yeah, I'm curious to hear kind of your early stage and kind of what goes through your brain when hard times come up.
Yeah. It's tough. The whole ride is tough, but you know, it's partly what makes it so rewarding, you know, because you know, you get years ahead, and then you're able to look back at, oh man, these big travesties, these big events, or these big, you know, what seemed like
setbacks,
just huge setbacks, or just huge, you know, months and months of difficult times, whether it's financially or accidents or personal problems, or, whatever arises, just being able to look back and down the road and see, wow, like look where we are now, and look how hard it was then. And of course, there's still, like you said, challenges every day.
Yeah, big time.
Every day, and they'll continue to come, but you can see the progress, and that's the rewarding part. But when you're in the fire, in the thick of it, it's I don't know, it's really challenging, and I think especially, whether it's business or personal, I think it's really healthy and smart to, take a step back, kind of try to have a bird's eye view on the situation. Try to see yourself in your situation, your business, from an outsider's perspective, and say, okay, look, this is what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
This is how you feel, and that makes sense that you feel this way. But let's look at this, let's take all the emotion out of it, and let's figure out what's the best way to move forward with this.
Yeah. How do you think, like, how do you approach taking the emotion out of like decisions and stuff? Because I know it's probably a little bit easier for you based off of like what I know about you, just being good friends with you for a long time. For me, that's something that's very, very difficult. I've gotten okay at it. I wouldn't say I'm amazing at it, but, and I know some of my coping, whether you want to call it coping mechanisms or just processes that I go through to try to take the emotion out of it. But
Sure.
I'm an emotional person. You're
Right.
a little bit more on the logical side of things, right? So I'm just curious, like, are there any specific tips or tricks that you do when all of a sudden, something super emotional, oh my gosh, the sky is falling, come up, right? I mean, even just this last season in your swim lesson business, there was a few big things that came up for you guys that you had to navigate. And I always am very impressed from an outsider just looking at the way you handle those. But I'm just curious if you have any tips or tricks for the viewers on how to go about that.
Well, I mean, it depends on the situation, but I think what's always helpful, if you're talking about specifically a business setting, I think what's really helpful is just kind of giving yourself a reminder, lay everything, take an hour just by yourself or with your partner or whoever you need to be involved, whether that's a spouse or whatever, but just lay everything out on the table. I honestly use pencil and paper, but let's just cover every aspect of the business, and just lay it out. Okay, this is how much money is coming in, whether you want to do this per month, per annual basis, whatever. This is how much money is going in. This is how much we're doing in payroll. This is how much we're doing here. Just lay out all the financials, and then lay out all the auxiliaries within your business, and the general direction. Lay out your goals. Lay out everything that encompasses your business and what you're about and what you're trying to do. And then you will list your, if it's one challenge or a list of challenges that you're trying to tackle or overcome, you take a look at that, and then you see how it fits into the equation, and then kind of gives a little perspective on things, or at least it has historically for me, where, okay, this is an issue, but when we're looking at the grand scheme of things, this is an issue that we will be able to overcome. It might set us back a few months. It might set us back a year or whatever it is. And maybe that's a massive setback. Maybe it's a minor one. But it helps you start to think, how are we going to, what are we going to do? How are we going to overcome this? Your brain starts having a positive reaction of questioning, how am I going to overcome this, instead of,
focusing on the problem.
These panicking negative thoughts of, oh, what am I going to do? When you lay it all out there, and then it's like, okay, this is how we can tackle this problem. Yeah. Because I think most of the time, sometimes there's going to be much bigger issues where you do have to, come up with drastic approaches, and I think that's a good thing. But most of the time, when you lay it out that way, puts things into perspective a little bit, and you're like, okay, how about we can get through this.
So some of those examples you gave, I think those are awesome. How about when things are like not necessarily financial related, but they're still like fire alarms going off? You know what I mean? Whether it's maybe you have I don't know, an employee that's like an integral part of your business that got another offer elsewhere or something, like those sorts of things, or like even things that were like out of your control. You know what I mean? Right. I'm curious just to hear your thoughts on those things, like how you make like, you know, that what's that term? It's like don't make a mountain out of a molehill or whatever, you know. Yeah. Sometimes people just really spiral out of control and they make a mountain out of a molehill. Yeah. I'm just curious, how do you catch yourself, and then what's the thought process?
Well, that's a really good question, because we've had many problems that are simply not in our control. I'm sure you have too. Mm-hmm. That's a common thing. But I feel like when it comes to mentally preparing myself and trying to have a logical grasp on the situation and to determine what's the best thing to do to move, moving forward, mm-hmm. is I think just, again, kind of taking yourself out of the situation and really just thinking, okay, people I admire or the person that I want to become, what's the smart thing to do here? Mm-hmm. What's the person, I feel like I have this relationship with this person that I want to become, like this, super successful, awesome dad, awesome member of the community, just great guy that everybody loves or everybody wants to be around, that gives people energy and all that. Yeah. I feel like I kind of have a relationship with my future self, and I think, okay, what
would they do?
What is that? Yeah. What is that guy? What would he do?
Oh, dude, that's cool. Wow. Yeah. That's
or
really
what
cool.
would I have to do in this situation in order to get me to be that person?
Oh, wow. That's really cool. That's really cool.
I feel like that's been super helpful because, it again kind of gets you out of your own mind. Yeah. And into a space of, what's the best thing, or what's the best thing for the situation, but what's the best thing that'll help me become something better, overcome this problem and continually improve. Yeah.
Dang, I really like that. I think, there hasn't, knock on wood, but there hasn't been any major catastrophes in my businesses thus far. Obviously still problems all the time, adversity, always trials. Yeah. Some obstacles pop up all the time. And especially early on when you're growing a business, and a lot of people more than likely that are listening to this want to start a business in one way or another, or are in the middle of trying to start a business, and things just always seem to come up, right? And I actually heard this thing a long time ago when I was doing door-to-door sales. I can't remember if it was the year that you were with us or not, back when we were in college. For those people who have been listening to us for a while, they know that Landon and I did door-to-door sales our first year together, and then Landon went and started his businesses, and I kept doing it for a while and should have stopped way earlier than I did. But anyways, tried to keep the dream alive for a long time. But anyways, and he would say, there was a guy that just said, hey, every time you accomplish something, or not every time you accomplish something, but he was like, take some time to write down all of the like accomplishments, big or small, that you've done, and keep a note of it or whatever. And so when those like moments of panic, he's like, if you need to like go back to that list and realize like you've done things before, you've overcome trials before, and you're going to do it again, and you're going to do it again, and you're going to do it again, and you're going to do it again. And I think sometimes, personally, when working with some people that I coach and stuff, they want to learn the information that I teach them or something in hopes that it will remove all the obstacles. But what I have to constantly remind them is like, no, I'm making you better so that you can get over the obstacles that you haven't been able to previously get over, Yeah. Because that's what I've essentially had to do. I've hired mentors. I've hired business coaches. I've read tons of books, listened to tons of podcasts like this, listened to audiobooks, right? Like, that's what every successful person seems to do, right? Mm-hmm. And understand is that it's like the poor person's mentality. And I don't love, saying people are poor, people are rich or whatever, but like the poor person's mentality is, like you said earlier, is like the victim mentality of saying, oh gosh, like I wish things were easier. I wish things were, but it's like, dude, why don't you just wish for you to get better? You know? And I think that's really cool what you were saying about how you overcome some of those obstacles and really just detach your own mind from it. Because by doing that, that's what allows you to realize, okay, that's what allows you to have those positive thoughts.
Yes, exactly.
Not the negative thoughts. You stay in the negative spiral, downward spiral.
Woe is me. It's too hard to your mind's not in a creative space to problem solve and come up with, brilliant solutions for your business.
Your heart is beating really fast, and you're kind of getting that anxious feeling,
antsy,
and you're getting short of breath, and you're just thinking of like, oh my gosh, what if this happens, and then what if this unravels this, and what if I lose this customer or this client because of that, and this, and blah 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 blah, right? And like your mind will just create that, and so you have to really, like you said, take that time to just say, hey, everything's gonna be all right. Everything's gonna be all right, and even, I don't know if you've ever done this before too, but I got into a habit for a while when hard times would come up, is I would just say, what's the worst that could happen?
Yep.
Right. And then you come to grips with like, even if the worst thing happened, you'll still be okay. You'll still be alive, and you'll still have, like the ability to keep trucking on. And it's like, when you realize that, you're like, okay, this is fine. Nothing's going to happen. Right. Like if the worst that can happen isn't death, pretty much every other option is okay.
It's always overcomable.
Always overcomable. Yep.
In the early stages of one of my businesses, the one that me and my wife used to run, and now it's
kind of self-sustaining, or
a little bit different.
Yeah.
But there was once upon a time a huge obstacle that my wife was, really we were both extremely emotional about. Our entire business was in jeopardy. This one really put us through the ringer. It was a stressful time for sure. Just not sleeping, it was a really uneasy, stressful time.
That's tough. Yeah.
And this lasted months.
Yeah.
And so, that was kind of something that I always needed to reassure, my wife with, because she, happened often. We'll say that, all these questions come, oh man, what are we going to do if this, and what if this happens? Then, you just get into this downward negative
then
spiral.
That happens, and if that happens, then this will happen.
Yeah.
And then the kids are going to get taken from us, and then then we're going to go to jail. No, it's like,
not a good place to be.
Yeah, your mind just spirals.
But that was a really common question that I would say, okay, like, let's think about it. Like, what's the actual worst that could happen?
Mm-hmm.
And what we decided, what I trying to help her, see through it was, okay, the worst thing that can happen is we absolutely lose our business.
Yep.
But if that happens, we have this business, this small business that we're building. It's not much, but it's something to go off of.
Yep.
We have this backup plan. We have these savings in place that'll last us, a period of a couple months that can get us through until we find something else, and then we'll start over and we'll get rolling. And if we
did it once, we can do it again.
Yeah, we did it once, we can do it again, and we'll build something and so I feel like that was really helpful in those situations. Mm-hmm. Not only for her, but for me too, because I needed to hear what I was saying.
Yep.
That was advice for me too.
Yep.
So I think that's a really helpful train of thought. What is the worst that can happen? Because if you have that internal confidence in yourself that you can do great things and that you can do hard things, it doesn't matter what life throws at you, you will be successful.
Yep, exactly. And even just hearing you say that, I just kind of had this thought too. It's like, I think I've had to, reassure my wife a couple times too, like especially in the early stages of building our company, our main company that has now trickled over into these other companies. But it was kind of like, maybe if we had like a low revenue month or something happened, we get unforeseen large medical bills for whatever reason. We've had a lot of kids. We also have a son with special needs. So it's like we get slapped sometimes with these $4,000 or $5,000 plus medical bills out of nowhere, and we don't really expect them ever. And then it's just like, oh, great. Now we got to come up with that. And it's like, okay, let's go take that out of the business. And then it's like, okay, great. Like now let's keep doing what we're doing or whatever. Right. So there's just these different like financial things. And so in the early stages when revenue is rocky and it's up and down, up and down, up and down, I always, would think to myself, kind of like you were saying, and it just saying, hey, worst comes to worst, I know that I can provide this value, and this value to the marketplace, whether it's at a job. If I had to go get a job to provide my family, bridging the gap between, a business failure and another business venture, I would do it. Like we all would, we all would do that, right? Yeah. If we were really committed to what we needed, but we would never lose sight of what it was that we were trying to build.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And I think a lot of people, and maybe somebody even listening to this right now, may have gone through something similar to where they were like, started a business venture, started getting a little bit successful with it. Then an obstacle came up, decimated them. And then now they just tell themselves, well, it's not for me. Like I tried once, I failed, and therefore I will fail every single other time if I try again. But guess what? Like there's that famous saying of like, every successful entrepreneur has a graveyard of 10 dead businesses in their backyard or whatever, you know?
Yep.
And that's another thing, hopefully a word of encouragement to people listening to this right now, is that if you have had a setback, if you have had something bad happen to you, maybe you've gone through a bankruptcy, maybe you've had a car repossessed, or your house went into foreclosure, or something bad happened to you, it's okay. It's okay. One of my favorite business coaches I've ever hired, one time we're sitting in his $1.5, maybe $2 million house, and he tells me, he goes, you know that I went bankrupt 6 years ago or 7 years ago or 5 years ago or something like that, some crazy short amount of time.
Crazy.
And he's like, literally think about the house you are standing in right now. And I was bankrupt 5 years ago, 6 years ago or whatever. I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, we built this back. Like, and it's like, I was just like, dude, and having little moments like that and learning from those types of people, I just am like, you know what? Failure really doesn't exist if you just keep trying.
It's true.
I know it's like a super cliche saying, but it is so true. The reason it's cliche is because it's so true, you know?
Right.
And it's really sad for me when I do see people fail and give up on things. I just always hope in the back of my mind, and even with some of my students who have tried different things and then, you know, had a little bit of success, stopped or whatever, like the ones that have come back have always done better the second time around. But also I'm always secretly hoping and sitting, you know, praying that they'll come back and give entrepreneurship another shot, because I know that like everyone wants to be a one-hit wonder, but there's very few people that are. You know what I mean? I had plenty of failed business ventures before ever succeeding in this one. You know what I mean? In these ones that I'm doing now. And so anyways, it's just yeah, man, I'm curious, what do you think derails people the most? Is it the obstacle itself, or is it the idea, like what goes on in their head about the obstacle?
That's a great question, because I think, you know, it's a little bit of both, because there's things that, you know, people deal with that, you know, obstacles that many people dealt with that you know, you put yourself in their shoes and it's like, man, what would I do? I have no idea.
Yeah.
Like, that just sucks.
Yeah.
Like, they just had a tough, you know,
go at it.
Just bad. The cards weren't in their favor. Yeah. And it's like, you know, they did their best and it is what it is. But I think our perception on time is like the key there, because, you know, like you said, failure is not, it's an event, but it's not, failure shouldn't be measured over a period of time.
Yeah.
I think we consider a failed event a failure, but it's just, you got to change your perspective on that, on what that word means.
Yeah. And
as long as you're pushing and grinding, and you stick with it and you're living by, you know, wise principles, I think you're bound to be successful in what you do.
Yep.
Whatever that means, you know, depending on your goals. But I wanted to ask you, because, you and I respect you a lot in what you've done, and you've built up a fantastic business. And I think you're a perfect example of this, because you're one who's kind of seen the others, you know, you're over the hill a little bit there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I don't mean this in any shade, you know, on you or anything like that, because you've built awesome businesses. But you've had a lot of failed businesses too.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And so I want to hear your perspective on that, because one, I think that's just a testament to your determination, to your drive.
Yeah.
Which I think is, you know, a very important key component to being a successful entrepreneur.
Oh yeah.
What other either characteristics or skill sets or mindsets do you feel like you had to take with you in your journey to becoming a successful entrepreneur and overcoming those failures?
Man, really good question. So I think when it comes from like jumping from one business failure to the next, to the next, to the next. Cause that seems like what I was doing for 7-8 years before finally something started to get, is that I would just always, well, first and foremost, I talk about this all the time with the vision and having a very clear idea of what you want out of life. And then comes like the need to believe that you can actually do it, because sometimes we set goals that are just like, oh, you know, like I've told you about like my dream house, right?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Of how audacious it is. It's going to take probably $12 to $20 million, something like that to build.
Yeah.
But, you know, to me, like $12 to $20 million to some people would be like, oh yeah, that's never going to happen. But to me, I'm like, there's people who make $1 billion a year in active income.
Right.
That would pay for that house, you know, 50 times. They could build 50 of my dream home in my house. You know what I mean? And so I have this definite belief that like I can do it and that it will happen. It's just a matter of me finding the right vehicles to get into, to make it happen, figuring out the right cash flow systems to create cash flow that I can put into assets and have those assets spit off more cash flow and kind of do that whole snowballing effect, right? And yeah, I think I just always knew that like if I set my mind to something that I could figure out a way to get it done, you know? And I know some people aren't naturally wired that way. I wouldn't consider I think I am a little bit naturally wired that way, but it has taken some training inside of my head to do and to really get down to like, okay, well, this business, you know, is not doing well for XYZ, right? And the funny thing is I watch a lot of Shark Tank, and so I'd always hear Kevin O'Leary talk about like, if your business isn't making money in this amount of time, it's time to take it behind the barn and shoot it.
Right.
And I actually would shorten that amount of time too, which I don't know if there's any like skill in that really, but I think he was like, if you've been in business for 3 years or if you tried to make money for 3 years and you haven't, I think that was his thing, 3 years. For me, it was more like a year.
Yeah.
I was like, if I've tried something for a year, or maybe I can see the writing on the wall or something like.
There's no serious traction.
Yeah, there's no serious traction.
Yeah.
Or I can see that the business model that I chose, the path to profitability is going to be a ways out. And I have either, you know, no ability to raise money or don't want to raise money for one way or another. I don't want to give up 40% of my company to, you know, to an investor or whatever, then just knowing that, okay, time to shut her down. Yeah. Or for a lot of like the way that I see it in my head is I'm just going to put it on the back burner and I'm going to try something else. But I do. And I think some people also, I would encourage people not to go less than 12 months on like, oh, this didn't make money in 2 months, so therefore I'm going to take it behind the barn and shoot it, because you do have to give it enough time. But to me, 12 months,
for sure.
12 months of dedicated, very hard work for a business that doesn't require a lot of capital to start, you should be able to get that thing off the ground, right? Now, I know everybody's going to come to me, well, what about the Amazons of the world? What about the IBMs and the, you know, all these tech companies and Tesla? And it's like, okay, yeah, those require hundreds of millions of dollars of investment from private equity companies and everything. So that's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about the businesses that you can start with less than $10,000, whether it's a local service-based business or an internet business, marketing company, a sales company of some sort, selling some sort of product or service for someone else, whatever. You should be able to get that thing off the ground in 12 months of dedicated hard work, even if it's outside of a 9-to-5 job. So that's one thing I want to make sure not let people get twisted. But going back to your original question is like, you know, how have I gone from failure to failure and still kept an upbeat attitude? I think the reason why is because I forced my perspective to not be, that's a failed business. It's, those are stepping stones to get me where I'm trying to go. Nice. You know what I mean?
I like that.
So yeah, because the way I look at it is like all those failures, and here's another cliche saying, it's like, I never fail, but I always learn, or something like that. Right. Yeah. I never lose, but I always learn. Right. Yeah. So it's like, I either win or I learn. That's type of a thing. Yeah. And that's the mindset that I've had, you know, my whole entrepreneurial career. I've always had something that I've been trying to do. You know me, right? Like we've known each other basically since our whole career.
A long time. Yeah.
Our
professional career.
Professional career, you've known me from the very beginning.
Yep.
So like, you know that I've always had some sort of project outside of my 9-to-5s.
Yes.
That I've been working on. Right. And It's just a lot of them haven't worked out, but I've learned, and all of the things that I learned along the way are now things that I remember and build off of for the stuff that is working. Right. And I think that's another thing that people need to realize. And I try to be very upfront with people, because especially when someone hires me or buys one of our programs or something like that to coach them through an aspect of business and starting a business, I almost work on trying to help them become a better entrepreneur more than just like, hey, this is how you do this business, right? Or whatever. Because at the end of the day, the way I explained it to a lot of people is like, you're going to get to the point where like you practice becoming a good entrepreneur so much so that eventually, just like a sport, I treat it like a sport. Like imagine instead of a baseball player and you practicing to become a really good baseball player, you're practicing to become a really good entrepreneur. Eventually you are going to get to the point, if you don't stop, to where you are such a good entrepreneur to where you don't need a job anymore.
Yeah.
That's all it really is.
Yeah.
And I've explained that principle to a lot of people before, and it's like it finally clicks for them when they hear it explained that way. And for whatever reason, it just makes more sense to me to think about it like that than to think like, oh yeah, like I'm going to make X amount of dollars from this business and then I'm going to quit my job and then I'm going to retire. Like a lot of people talk about like retiring, and I'm like, no. Like you're kind of just switching professions from being an employee to an entrepreneur, but it's still a profession and you still have to keep getting better at it. Right. And you still have to keep doing the work. Right. And, anyways, yeah. So those are some of the things that have gone through my head over time. I know I kind of went off on a little bit of tangents, but great. Yeah, I have plenty of failed business ventures for everybody that's listening. Mobile apps, multiple mobile apps, all sorts of different things that I've tried and failed at. And the funny thing is, the thing that ended up started working with the marketing company, the lead generation company, was actually a previous failed attempt at a business. And then I picked it back up and finally became successful with it because I just picked it back up and I came back to it and I tried again. I took another at bat. Yeah, I took another at bat and it finally took off. So that's just, sometimes people need to hopefully hear a message like this, because they're just like, oh gosh, like, I'm struggling now, but I know that if I keep at it, like things will work out. That's absolutely true. If you keep at it, things will work out. Yeah. I can't promise you win. It might take someone 25 years where it takes someone else 2.5 months.
Or they're a one-hit wonder.
But for those who do stick to it, they will find success.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and I think I think there's a lot of, it'd be smart to, list out the principles of the successful entrepreneurs. And, and I think that, a lot of that has to do with, determination and discipline and, having all the right mindsets and, there's a lot that goes into mindset, but also just being consistent and relentless in what you're doing. And I think, along with making wise decisions, and setting yourself up for success and always consuming, and enriching your mind with knowledge, I think, there really is no way to fail. Like you will be successful for sure.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, so now, like we said, overcome, on the other side of the hill, you'd say. Yeah.
I mean, just having the momentum in my favor, full-time entrepreneurship.
Yes, full-time momentum, because I don't want to make it sound, life is not easy for either of us right now. No. At all. If anything, I think
if anything, it's
life
gotten harder.
Just presents different, exactly. But really, life just presents different challenges, for entrepreneurs within the different stages. And I'm sure as we grow and develop, and 10 years from now, we're going to look back and say, wow, the challenges that we're dealing with now are just vastly different.
Very different.
In this stage of your business, what do you feel like are the greatest challenges you face, and how do you tackle those?
Great question. So I would say the greatest challenge that I have faced thus far is the balance of like time and the balance of your time, especially because as an entrepreneur, that's why a lot of us want to become entrepreneurs in the first place, is because we want to buy back our time, right? But the funny thing is I go in these ebbs and flows of like, I buy back all my time. So I'm feeling great. And then I kind of reach this new echelon, this new level. And then all of a sudden I lose all my time again, like even like less time than I had when I first started or whatever, but more money and more problems. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's just like, and then I'll figure out and I'll build some system, hire some person or something like this to take things off my plate. And then I'll get my time back.
Yeah.
And then there'll just be something else. So I think that right there is probably one of the biggest things of delegation and realizing, and you have to like beat this into people's heads. And I have to beat this into my own head, which is like, you want to be a business owner, not a business operator, right?
Yeah.
I constantly find myself, because, you know, you work for 10 years of your life as an employee for somebody else, and you constantly feel like you need to be this worker bee. And so then even when you start to build companies, right? This is something that we found out with me recently, where I'm just like, I was wearing all these hats, you know, and now what we've done is like, okay, Zach, take a little bit of this money that you're making and hire people to, you know, take care of these things and take them off your plate. And like now all of a sudden, like the sun has come out again, and I'm like, oh man, like, so now I'm on the upswing. But I know as more money comes in, more ventures are started, more things that we get, more things, more opportunities. Yeah. Doors are opening all over the place right now. Business deals are in the process of being made and everything. And so then it's going to create more of my time and stuff. So I think my biggest problem, if you could call it that, not a problem, challenge, you know, right now, obstacle, is making sure and correctly delegating the right things, not overloading someone else so that they also don't get into that feeling of burnout and like, oh my gosh, this is just terrible, right?
Whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So balancing hiring the right team members, training them up. Hopefully they already come to the plate with the knowledge that we need them to have, so that I don't have to spend again. At the very beginning, I was hiring a lot of people that had no prior knowledge, but they were like, hey man, you got money, I got time, and I'm willing to help you out. But you teach me how to do whatever it is that you need me to do, and I'm in. And I'm like, okay, great. And then I found myself spending exponentially more time training the person. Now that has taken off in the sense that like that was worthwhile time spent. But at the time I almost got more stressed out. Right. And then I made this mistake a couple times doing the whole, well, just get out of my way, I'll do it myself, because it takes me less time than it would take me to train you on how to do the same thing. Right. So then I would find myself stepping in wrongfully. I watched people do this, of people who I worked for growing up throughout my career as well. It's funny because I watched it unfold in front of my eyes, and I'm like, don't do this when the time comes. And then what do I find myself doing right when it happens? Doing the same thing.
It's tough, man.
Yeah, it's tough. And so like, this is actually something just 3 or 4 weeks ago that 3 or 4 weeks ago came to the conclusion or whatever, where I was just like, you know what? I want to have the habit of going to the gym every day. I'm a big guy. I've definitely got some fluff on me that I need to, you know, get under control. And so I was just like, but I would always make excuses. I'd be like, oh, I need to start working when my wife would go to the gym and like take the kids and stuff. So I was just like, 3 weeks ago, I was like, you know what? Like, things are never going to change if I'm not going to change. So I was like, I'm going to push off the start of my work day until 11 o'clock. And which is kind of unheard of for me. So this thing that I'm living right now with my time feels very uncomfortable for me.
Yes.
But I will say, I feel like I'm just as productive, getting just as much stuff done, if not more, because I'm also correctly now delegating what I would have been doing from 8 in the morning to 11 in the morning to somebody else if it needs to get done, and chopping it out if it doesn't need to get done and it's not important, but I would have just wasted my time doing it anyway, because I've chosen to take this time to like go help take my kids to school and all that stuff, and then go to the gym, and then after the gym get showered, breakfast, all that stuff, and then get ready for the workday. But so that's one of the biggest challenges that I think I'm facing right now, is just all of that
balance,
the time balance of that. And then also, you know, like, you know, everyone here probably knows that you and I each have multiple young children.
Yeah.
You guys have a very young baby at home, and you know, our twins are our youngest, and they just turned 2, and we've got 4 kids. And it's like that balancing being a good husband, a good father, spending time with them, making sure they're, you know, they've got time and everything, and making sure your businesses are still running. So that's my biggest thing right now, is balancing that time, empowering and training the people to take care of my business and take care of my customers and build awesome stuff, probably even better than I could have built it myself. You know what I mean? So, and then obviously just strategically making moves to make sure that the company is always moving in the right direction, so that everybody gets a big, payday, a big payoff at the end of the day for all their hard work, Right. So, yeah. How about you?
Very cool.
Like, what would you say are your biggest challenges that you're facing right now?
I should have been thinking about the whole time.
It's okay. I'm glad you paid attention to the answer.
No, yeah, that was great. I would say I would definitely agree that is one of my main challenges for sure, is the time balance between not only work and personal life, but also just within your businesses. It's hard. I feel like that's been a challenge for me, is knowing what right now requires my time the most, what is the most important thing right now. Mm-hmm. That's definitely been a challenge. And we are right now in the process of, we're training a new, basically a new operator for one of the businesses. And that's been a real challenge. The last couple of weeks for me is not just stepping in and doing everything. Yep. Because that's so difficult. It's so difficult, because here's the thing. If you are, either in our spot or in the beginning stages, but you've seen some traction and a little bit of success, if you're getting to the point where you're starting to replace yourself, the reason why is because you've done things right thus far. Yeah. And so in your mind, I'm really good at my job. Yep. And I can do it better than everyone. And and of course that is true, in the moment. But But I think sometimes it's important that we sit back and think, okay, look, you've done a great job up to this point, but get off your high horse, because anybody can do this part of there's a lot of aspects within business where, okay, yes, you're good at that, but you need to move on to other stuff. And
that's been a really hard thing for me. We've talked about this off camera before, multiple times. That's very difficult for me too, because it almost feels too like when you've built these businesses based off of your own hard work and just the sweat of your brow and everything, you feel almost like detaching yourself and finding someone else to fill your shoes. Yes. Do you ever feel like it's just for me, I think one of the hard parts that the limiting belief that I have in my head is that, oh, you're just going to stop doing that. That's what's gotten you this far. Yeah. And then you're worried a little bit well, is the quality of the product going to suffer because I'm not doing it?
There's layers to it for sure.
Yeah. And it's I have this totally, just difficult time with it. But when you really look back at it, and you really, like you said at the very beginning of this podcast, where you're if you got to take that time to take the 30,000 foot overview of relinquish yourself from being in the day to day and look at everything and go back to that vision, that clear path of what you're trying to do, what you're trying to create, and think to yourself, if I keep doing this, is it going to get me where I want to go? And 100% of the time it's no. Yeah. If you have a big enough vision, because most of the time, if your vision was just to create a business this little tiny bit, create a job for yourself. Yeah, a job. Then, creating a job for yourself.
Good for you, dude. That's awesome.
Then that's great.
It's what you want to do and whatever else.
But. But most of the time, your vision is bigger. And as you grow, your visions get bigger too. You're oh, I've gotten this far. How far can I push myself? And
because you realize what's attainable at that point. Yeah. It's okay, hey, I've built a $250,000 or a $500,000 business. $1 million business is not out of the question now. Yeah.
And then you get to $1 million and you're okay, well, now $2 million is not out of the question. Now $2 million. And you're what if I get to 5?
What if 5? Yeah.
And then you get to 5.
What would I have to do to get to 5?
Yeah. What would I have to do to get to 15? Right. Yeah. Because there's this principle, there's this instilled thing in all of our DNA of we want to grow. We want to be progressing and grow.
We want to progress. We want to grow.
When we're stagnant, we feel like we're dying.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
100%.
And so I can't remember how we got off on that tangent.
Well, what you were saying is, and it ties back into taking the 30,000, the bird's eye view perspective and saying, okay, let me get out of the situation and what's the best for the overall progression of the business. And like you said, basically 100% of the time or close to it, it's okay. Let's put this person in place. Let's let them run with it. I trust if you have your hiring process, whatever. I trust this person. I think they're going to do a great job. And it's not, I'm never going to see this person again. It's, hey, I'll be here to mentor this person and help them and correct them anytime I need to, while I focus my time and energy on the next step of progression to the business. Because I think, I don't know, it's like if you're building, it's like building stairs. Like, if you're building a stair, I mean, this is a dumb analogy here, but we'll descend. So I envision it as like building a stair, and like, you are going to do all the work for that first step. You get it going. And then once, and we'll say it's like a business. Okay. It's a business. And so you need somebody to come in and oversee that first step and make sure everything's coming along.
And you're going to go build
you got to work on
step.
the next one. And then as you grow your company, like we said, you're not going to grow unless you take those leaps of faith, which is hard. It's hard.
Dude, it's so hard.
It takes a lot of trust. It takes a lot of faith.
It's so hard because then,
in your people and in yourself that, hey, I'm confident that this is going to work and this is where we're going with this.
Yeah. And, I think the hard part is just like you have to make sure and realize, like, look, my lane, and like this has helped me a lot too, is when I take those moments to step back and think, like, are all the tasks that I'm doing on a day-to-day basis like actually what I need to be doing, and what gives me energy to my soul, and what fires me up, and is just like, because there are certain things in your business, as you know, that just drain your energy. And those are often the tasks that get put off the most, but they're still important enough to the business to where they need to get done.
The most important.
I procrastinate those types of tasks so much, but what I've had to learn to do is just like, okay, I really need to find people that those tasks that drain me actually jazz them up, and the tasks that drain them jazz me up, and finding those kind of those opposites of strengths and weaknesses, and surrounding myself. Like I typically, like they say opposites attract, like in relationships, which I think is kind of true, but like I feel like in business a lot of similars attract. So I find myself attracting a lot of people just like myself. Totally. And I actually had to tell some people this that like interviewed with me, is like, look, I love you. You're exactly like me. We think on the same exact wavelength, but I don't need another Zach right now. I have a couple Zachs. I have myself, and I have a couple other people. I need somebody that's not like me at all, that I probably would butt heads with. But that is going to get this crap done, because that's what needs to get done. And it just sucks my energy every time. So it takes me probably 5 hours to complete a task that somebody else could do in 30 minutes because they enjoy that kind of stuff, and vice versa. Things that would take them 5 hours and they would go home hating their life. It takes me 30 minutes to do, because I'm just like, all right, let's dive in, And so it's just so interesting, man, the dichotomy of problems that arise in businesses, and then trying to find people to help with those challenges and all that kind of stuff. It's just, oh man, it's crazy. But I will say, having gone through a lot of crap, like, I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. I bet you probably have a very similar feeling.
Like, been through the ringer, had blood, literally blood, sweat, and tears when it comes to business. But
literally blood, literally sweat, and literally tears.
Literally all of them, and a lot. But I wouldn't trade anything for the world right now. Absolutely. Like, I would not change one thing about, because it all
decade. Exactly. It all has served you.
Exactly.
It all has served you into building what you've built.
Exactly. It's made me who I am today, and it's given me, if life was a breeze thus far, then one, I wouldn't feel that I have accomplished anything. And then for two, I wouldn't feel like I have the confidence to build something over the next 10 years. But having been through the ringer a little bit, I know, okay, I have the ability to overcome these things. And I'm confident that if I keep progressing and doing the things that good entrepreneurs do on a consistent basis, that I will be successful. And that I'll take the momentum that I have currently and be able to go somewhere, to the moon over the next 10 years. And I think were you going to say something?
I was going to say, I wanted to give you a scenario of like give you a scenario, like put yourself in this someone's shoes who might be going through something. And I'd be curious how you would navigate it.
Okay.
So let's say, kind of on our theme here, overcoming adversity, right? Let's say you're somebody who is in a 9-to-5 job right now. You feel stuck because you're like, okay, I know, first of all, like there's parts of my day that I enjoy going into work. There's parts of my days that I definitely hate, right? You're yearning and desiring for something more in your life, but you just don't know how to get there, right? So it's like your intentions are all in the right spot, your heart's all in the right spot, but you feel definitely trapped because you're like, I know if I could just get back some more of my time that I could build something in this or that or whatever, right? Or maybe you even have a business idea. Mm-hmm. Let's say that. Let's say that's part of the scenario. You even have a business idea that's like definitely got some validity. It's got, you know that it would.
Done some research.
Yeah, you've done some research. It would work, or whether it's a product or service that you want to deliver. Maybe you invented some product that solves some big problem for the market or something. I don't know.
Cool.
Or you know that you could solve a problem based off of your experience and skill set.
Sure.
You could solve a big problem for a big enough segment of people that you could turn it into a good business. But you're just stuck because you're a dad. You have to provide for the family. You're a one-income family.
You have a job.
You have a wife. You have kids. Maybe you don't have kids, whatever. But that's the scenario. You feel stuck. You feel like you have to be in the job to get the paycheck to provide, but you hate it. You hate your life. You're not producing at your highest self. You're not your highest and best self when you're there at your job. You know that you could be great over here, but you feel stuck because you have to get the paycheck.
Yeah.
What do you do in those early stages, and what sorts of things would you be thinking through? I know this is like a tough scenario. So you're like, gosh, dang it, Zach. Yeah, you're like, I don't even know what to say. No, but I'm just curious. Like,
I would just loathe in my self-pity.
Just sit in bed all day.
There's no hope.
There's no hope. Just sit in bed. No.
Sorry. Finish the question.
No, that's the scenario, right? Is like you feel obligated to stay at a job because you need the paycheck, but you know that if you're truly going to become kind of like you were saying earlier, that highest version of yourself, that where you are currently is not the place where that's going to be fulfilled. You're not in the right vehicle.
Yeah.
So what do you do in that scenario?
That's a great question. Great scenario. And it's tough. That is a tough one.
Yeah.
But I would say, you're going to have to sit down with spouse, depending on kids' ages, sure, maybe the kids. But you're going to have to look at things and kind of have a very serious conversation of what the goals are, what the vision is. Having done all the research necessary, I think you have to find a way to and you'll probably have to be really, really creative on how you're going to have to do this.
Yes.
But if you are really yearning and you feel like you are dead inside, mm-hmm. and that you will not live until this burden is lifted off your shoulders, mm-hmm. then it's not worth living dead over for the next couple decades.
Till you actually die.
Till you actually die. It's not worth it. And so you have to be creative on how you're going to solve this, but whatever that looks like, whether that means, hey, we're going to grind for another 12, 18, 24 months, mm-hmm. and save up enough to where we have 6 months, 12 months, whatever you feel comfortable with, worth of expenses. Mm-hmm. And then I'll quit my job and then whole hog this thing. Mm-hmm. Or you could say, hey, look, spouse, I love you. Kids, I love you. Over the next 12, 18 month period of time, this is what we're going to try to do. And, you have to know that I'm doing this out of love for you, mm-hmm. and out of love for our family and where we're going as a whole. Mm-hmm. But I need 4 to 8 hours every day. And maybe that means you sleep for 4 to 6 hours a day. Mm-hmm. But that's the thing. It's not worth living dead. You have to be basically willing to do whatever it takes.
Yep.
And, you say that within reason. I wouldn't, to me, if it was a matter of like I'm not going to move across the country and never see my wife and kids over that or something like that.
Yeah.
But, I think you have to be really creative on how you're going to do it. But, you know, the great obstacles require great
resourcefulness.
Yeah, great resourcefulness and great ability to overcome the obstacle. But you know, like we said, those are the stepping stones that get you to where you want to go. And when you get to the other side, you look back and you say, "Wow, I can really accomplish great things, and I can do something here."
Yeah.
And so that's a tough one, but I think you sit down, analyze the situation, and you come up with a creative solution to do whatever you need to do.
I like it.
What do you got?
Oh, that's funny because I was like, oh shoot! Like when I was giving you the prompt, or when I was giving you the scenario, I was like, I don't even know what I would say here. Yeah, but I was kind of thinking about it as you were giving your answer, and I think the funny thing is that I'm like, first of all, kind of lived this personally.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, I was actually like, I did not, like, no joke, I did not like say this in a way that was just like, oh, giving you my story. But then as you were answering, I was like, dude, what the heck? Like, this is randomly really similar to what I actually went through.
That's great.
But my whole thing was like, okay, I've got 4 kids. I've got a really good paying job, but I am just burnt.
Yeah.
To a crisp. Every new raise, every new paycheck, you know, every new raise, more money that I'm making, more hours, more mental stress, more anxiety, more responsibility. Not that I shirk away from responsibility, but just more, right? And it got to the point where I was like, dude, I'm gonna die if I keep doing this. And kept trying to justify staying there, you know, but I knew I wasn't happy. I was like, I mean, even the slightest idea of starting my own thing would just get me so thrilled and so amped up and so excited that I was like, okay, I got to figure something out. So what I did when I just felt like I was in that loop, and maybe slightly what I would do differently too, is first and foremost, I would, and what I did, not what I would do, what I did was I said, okay, I work basically from, well, here's the interesting thing is I wasn't necessarily required to go into work until about noon every day, and we would work till 8 or 9 in the evening, right? But me being the type of person that I am, from a very early time, basically since I started at the company, even though they said, hey, we just need you here by at least noon, I would usually go in early, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, and just kind of hang out, see what I could do to help out and this and that. And that's what kind of got me a lot of promotions, a lot of opportunities. And they were just like
extra value.
Yeah, bringing extra value. You know, you get paid for the value you bring. And so, you know, the bosses, they were like, well, this Zach guy like really cares about this business, and shoot, he's showing a bunch of effort. He's showing up early and stuff. So when I finally had that realization, what I did was I stopped going in early, and I started doing the minimum that was required of me, right? So I wasn't going above and beyond at my job anymore. The above and beyond was now for me. Yeah. And those above and beyond hours were now spent building, you know, the lead gen business, right? And so I woke up, you know, probably 4 a.m. for, you know, 5 or 6 months straight, grinding before my kids woke up, and then, you know, did that. And then, you know, it just kind of started building and growing on its own, you know, from those hours that I was putting in outside my job. Then I would go into my job at noon, go till 9 o'clock, come home, crash, wake up, do it all again. You know? So that was the first thing, is like, I would definitely get a very, that's what I did. I suppose what I could have done potentially differently if I was more in a 9-to-5 type role, because my job was very different.
Unique job.
Yeah, it was a unique job. I suppose what I could have done differently if I was in a 9-to-5 job was like what Mark Cuban talks about, where he's like, I would have tended bars at night for tips, right? Yeah. Or something along those lines, right? So do some sort of job at night that you can also create additional income for yourself. Mm-hmm. And then use that to fund your project. And I think at the end of the day too, it kind of really depends. Like I gave kind of a vague scenario as far as the scenario, because like if I had a product, like I just gave Mark Cuban's thing of what he says on Shark Tank of what he would have done. That's like if you had a product that needed like funding to manufacture and all this kind of stuff.
Right.
But if it was a service that you could provide, that it was just like your time, I would spend all my evening hours serving and doing the service and doing my business and figuring out a way to leverage my time so that I could get out of it, right? Charge higher prices, provide better quality of work, do this, that, and the other thing. But
hire somebody, whatever that
hire somebody. Like. Yep. Maybe another big thing is you really want to take a good, this is something I did not do very good, that if I could go back and redo it, that I would do differently, is take a very good inventory of your finances because, and see any possible way that you can cut out any sort of fluff.
Yes.
Because I did not do that. And then it made it very hard when we transitioned into full-time entrepreneurship.
Right.
Because I was still trying to live this life of really solid working employee income and not, and you know, I didn't leave to become an entrepreneur when I had fully, replaced my income.
Right.
I left when we barely had enough to just cover our basic bills, but we were still living at a very high level. So I would cut expenses down as far as possible and see any possible way in the budget that you can save, scrimp, and maybe even, like you said, hire somebody, a VA or something along those lines that can take those tasks off your plate. Ultimately, the last thing that I also did, and that I would very much suggest that everybody does, is network and just get out and meet people and get some sort of a community around you, whether it's a virtual community where it's like a Facebook group that you join or just a group of friends or it's actual like a local networking group of some sort, like a BNI group or something along those lines, where you surround yourself with people who are going the same direction that you want to go. Because I will tell you, there's one thing that will kill you and kill your business and kill your dreams faster than anything. It's surrounding yourself with negative people or surrounding yourself with people who are not going where you want to go.
Yeah.
Until I just severed all correspondence and relationship with the people that were not going where I wanted to go, I was held back. I was holding myself back by continuing to associate with those people.
Yep.
And so I had to clip the cord and say, I'm off. See you later. Not really. I didn't have to be all up in their faces about it.
Right.
But I just stopped hanging out. And I got questions, Zach, where are you at? Like, why haven't you showed up here in a while? Yeah, we haven't seen you, blah, 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 blah. You know, and I just make up some sort of an excuse or whatever, just, you know. But in the back of my head, I'm thinking, hey, if you guys were going where I'm going, I'd still be hanging out with you. But in the back of my head, I'm thinking, I know that you're not going where I'm going. And so I got to figure out a new group of people. And eventually I found that group of people and I would converse with them all the time. For me, it was virtually. So nice. I found groups on Facebook and I would network with people and we'd get on Zoom calls. We'd practice sales pitches with, you know, complete random strangers. We'd do all sorts of things that were pertaining to my business goals and aspirations. And so that's kind of what I had to do so that I wasn't alone. And I found a little community of people that would push me and stuff. And so that's another huge, huge thing that I would do. And especially if you are that type of person who feels stuck, it can sometimes be very easy to get into that victim mentality of, I'm never going to get out of this. I'm just going to be in this never ending spiral of just hating my life.
Yep.
And, it's very important that you get yourself environmentally, out of that space as well, even if it's, again, virtually through Zoom. I mean, technology these days.
Yeah.
So those would be my answers on that. But,
nice.
Man, I think it's time to wrap up this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure and, subscribe to our podcast, subscribe to our YouTube channel if that's where you're watching us. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Leave us a comment, leave us a like down below, and we hope to see you tune into the next one.